is quite famous for saying, everything is perfect and it can always get better. And at first it sounds like a joke, or at best, a zinny type saying you'd see on a poster in a New Age store. But it's actually a really pragmatic statement. If we think about Buddhist teaching that everything arises from previous causes, then we understand that this moment is perfect. This moment is the best that it can possibly be based on the history that created this moment. Now, notice the statement doesn't say everything is wonderful. It says everything is perfect. Everything in this moment is exactly how it has to be. And that's a big adjustment for a lot of people. But when you adjust to it, it really leads to an experience of contentment in the present moment. Not a comfortability that it's always going to stay that way. And we don't want that to happen, because remember, there's the second half of that statement, and it can always get better. So to be content in this moment is simply to understand that it could not possibly be different than it is, because the past has already been written. The past created this moment. This moment is. But we can make this moment a better, we can make the future better by what we do in this moment. So what we do creates future moments. So if you're discontent with the moment, don't wish that it were different. Work to make the future different. And words make a big impact in our minds and our actions. So one of the first things I'd like you to do in this practice is to try to remove the word wish from your vocabulary altogether. When something happens to someone that we're sorry that it happened, be sorry that it happened. But don't say, I wish that hadn't happened. Because that enforces a feeling that this moment could be different. No, it can't. It enforces discontent. It enforces dissatisfaction with the present moment. Say, I'm sorry that that happened. But understand that this moment could not be different than it is with the past that we have. Now, if we suddenly discover time travel and are able to change it, yeah, that throws it all out. But in physical reality, as it is right now, this moment cannot be different than it is. So be content in it. When you get rid of the thought, I wish, it becomes amazingly easy to be content in the present moment as you plan for what you're going to do to make things better. Recognize the things that you don't like, sure. But don't recognize them wishing that they were different. Recognize them planning for how you can make them different in the future. That gives you action. That gives you agency. That gives you power. Wishing that it was different removes all of those things from your life. You have the power to change the future. Everyone does. No one has the power to change the present. And when you realize that, contentment settles in your being. And you're able to be at peace with the moment. And when you're at peace with the moment, that even more enhances your ability to work positively to make changes in the future. So just take that thought to mind, that the present moment is what it is. Accept it, be content in it, and change the future. Don't waste your effort wishing the present were different. In pragmatic Buddhism, the order has a threefold ethic of pragmatic Buddhism called awareness, acceptance, action. And that's exactly what I'm talking about right now. Be aware of what the present moment is. Accept that this is what it is. And then act to make the future better. Everything is perfect, but it can always be better.
Thank you, Glenn. There's a quote that I read recently that I've been working every day to incorporate into my life. And it's joy is the present moment minus your opinion of it. And,
Like that.
and yeah, but your discussion today really helped me with the joy part. So thank you.
This is Beth, by the way. I want to say, yeah, that was a very good one, particularly for me today, because especially as someone in recovery, because you spent sometimes years just wasting opportunities and destroying things in your life. It's very easy to be regretful and to want to go back and fix those things and wish everything was different. So, good reminder for me. Also, I think some of that speech kind of made me think, so basically, be the change you want to see in the world.
I'm a little confused, or maybe confused isn't the right word, conflicted is more appropriate. What about outside influences that harm us? You know, natural disasters, or, you know, a crime against our person, you know, those that we care for. Those aren't necessarily influenced by our actions of the past. Those are just outside influences that happen to encounter us at a precise moment in time.
Right.
So how is it that those things, some of them very severe, how is it we're not supposed to wish those things didn't happen? You know, if you see someone you love struck down, how am I supposed to just say, sorry that happened to you, do better in the future? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and it's not that casual attitude.
Mm,
Feel the sorrow deeply,
right.
but the past is written. It cannot be changed. Whether it's something that we did, or a natural disaster, or an attack by someone else, or any of those things that occurred in the past cannot be changed.
Mm.
So no amount of wishing that they didn't happen is ever going to make them not happen.
So is it almost like the wishing is that compulsive thinking it over and over is more of a sense you're using wishing versus the wishing isn't to wish someone well or to wish as more of an intent? Because I feel like maybe there's a difference in the type of the way the word is used.
Yeah. wishing someone well is a different thing. That's, to me, that's all, that is focusing on the future. That's, I hope you are happy in the future.
Versus like what you would be more coming on for a natural disaster, so that would be that compulsive, just going back and back and back. What was that I done before? And wish everyone had done something different.
Yeah, and
Which is just putting energy into something you can't change.
exactly, and it's really what the Buddha was talking about in the word tansha, which is the cause of dissatisfaction in the Four Noble Truths. Incorporated in the Pali word tansha is wishing, and it's almost a magical desire type thing. And remember that the Buddha was incredibly radical 2,600 years ago to come out and state, no, things happen because of causes. And once those causes occur, the effect is set. That is what's going to happen. No gods, no hoping, no magic, none of that's involved, and nothing you can do is going to change this present moment. That was a radical idea in a time that I could wish to the gods, they're going to take care of things. No, you say, no, this is, when something happens, this is the result. No amount of wishing is going to make it change. And clinging to that wishing, that's the desire he was talking about in the word tansha. Not desiring that I may get a new job in the future. That's something you can plan for and work toward. Wishing the present moment were different, that is the root of our dissatisfaction. Now, I also don't want to say ignore the past, because it can be a wonderful lesson for us of what not to do in the future if there are things that we don't like about the present moment. Well, that happened because this. I'm not going to do that next time. Or I'm going to work against legislative action that encourage this moment to occur. Learn from the past. But don't wish that it were different, because it's not going to make any difference.
Different way of coming at it. When we wish for things in the past to change or had changed, we create almost a false narrative that we can't live. And so, and then we start fantasizing about that life. And then before we know it, the train has left the station, and then we're not there anymore. And that causes emotion. It's like, oh, I wish it was this way. It's not this way. And if I had. So when we wish for it, we're causing this ultimate reality to bubble up that we can't live into.
Yeah, the Buddha was incredibly pragmatic. You know, he was, hey, reality is what it is. Live in this moment and work to make the future better. But let go of all that shit in the past, because you can't do a thing about it.
I have a conflict as well, or a caveat that, you know, this works for us as pragmatic groups. Like we should, I wouldn't say we should be aware and correct our wishing within ourselves. But when we see somebody else going through a tragedy, you know, one of the most powerful ways that we can connect with them in the time of their tragedy, establish this was different. because they get that. Because in tragedy, people wish it was different real hard as they're coming to terms with what reality is. But if you sit down and say, this is reality, sorry about your luck, like we're gonna be, you might, I don't know, that feels callous to me.
And it's all in your approach. I mean, yeah, if you were to say, yep, sorry,
This arose because of that.
Right.
this is what happens when you get caught in an earthquake. Yep. No, of course you're not going to approach it that way. But at the same time, I think saying to a person who is suffering from that type, whether it be the loss of a loved one or anything else, I wish that didn't happen. That's giving them the same false narrative you were talking about earlier. That's saying to them, boy, I wish we could go back and change what happened. But you can't. You're giving them a false narrative that doesn't exist.
This is kind of, I can see that. I was, you know, strong and the change that I am going to say, oh, I wish that hadn't happened to me. I wish that would. But I can understand not showing the compassion and empathy for what happened. And medium grievance or look tragedy at the present moment and move forward to overcome it or make it better in the future. I believe that.
Yeah, I think your statement, John, that dealing with compassion is incredibly important. I mean, you have to understand other people when you're dealing with other people who encounter tragedy. You have to understand that yes, they are dealing with tragedy, and I'm going to deal with it as compassionately as I can. I just think from my own experience losing my husband, it did not help when people said, I wish he didn't have AIDS. Well, there's not a damn thing that's going to change that. He's not going to suddenly pop back into my life because you wish that. But when people said, I'm so sorry that you and he had to go through this, that's a beautiful, compassionate statement. But giving me hope that it could have been different. Oh, if Reagan had funded research, we could have gotten a cure before he died. Yeah, but he didn't. I always think that giving a false narrative to someone is more harm than it is good. But I understand, especially in your position as a chaplain, you have to deal with people where they are at the moment, and not everyone has the same approach. And those who have a strong Christian background, for example, maybe they need that narrative in that time. Okay, I can see that.
Speaking as a psychotherapist, I must say that I do think it's more helpful to help people move from the false narrative and to say something along the lines of, I'm so sorry that this happened, and I'm so sorry that you're suffering this way, is far more helpful than to join with the person around the, I wish that it hadn't happened. I feel like that engenders a lot of anger at times about the fact that it happened. I mean, of course, people are going to have anger anyways and resentment. But then, as you suggested, it can go into anger towards others because, Reagan didn't fund that research or whatever, and the anger is not useful unless people are thinking about what they're going to go do in the future. So to me, it is more useful to be using for terms like, I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry that you're suffering this way. To bring the person into the present moment is far more useful, far more pragmatic.
Yeah, and I think that anger also it can disconnect people from things that are otherwise good in their lives, even their religious practice.
Mhm.
I can be so angry at God because God shouldn't have let that happen, that I lose a spiritual practice that maybe otherwise is 99% beneficial in my life. But that anger at God because he didn't change this makes me lose that practice that could have been a wonderful thing in my life, or anger at another person. So yeah, I think to me the reason that Buddhism is often called the first psychotherapy is exactly what you just mentioned, that it is that dealing with reality as it is. And when we do that, when we let go of false narratives, that's when we're able to begin focusing on the future, on where we're going to move in the future and how we're going to get there. Instead of continuing these false narratives, oh, if he was still here, I'd be going to musical theater whenever it's in town instead of not going to the theater anymore. Okay, get off your ass and buy a ticket to a musical then. So yeah, I really do think it's a psychotherapeutic approach, and it's why people like Jung and many other early psychotherapists were so influenced by Buddhism, because it is reducing that false narrative. When you really look at what the Buddha is saying, it is, let's deal with reality the way it is and then make it better. It doesn't, and that's the thing that so frustrates me about the way many Westerners think of Buddhism, that, oh, it's just, oh, accept things the way they are. Bullshit. Yes, it's accept things the way they are and then make it better. Things are perfect, but they can always be better. This is like point.
What came, I'm sorry, was somebody saying something?
Oh, no, I was just saying, go ahead, Johnny.
Thank you. What came up for me was the rumination around the shoulda, coulda, woulda of the present moment is certainly familiar to me, but it's when I actually sit with the feelings, whether they're grief or joy, but sit with them, not in them, but sit with them. There comes, and I think Glenn mentioned it, this contentment, this calming, but this sense of responsibility too, right? When I actually feel the feels, as they say, of what's going on, and where my mind can race to is like this, if particularly if it's something that's I deem negative or painful or uncomfortable, this should never happen again, or this can't ever happen again. And I don't have the capacity or the authority to make that much of a change. But the other phrase that came up for me was, well, I can, do what I can where I am with what I have. So I might need to keep scaling it back, but and it's kind of like the dark cousin of rumination. It's the throw my hands up and say, well, I can't change this. Okay, I might not be able to change this, but I can change something. And if I can change something related to this, that's for me better and healthier and more useful and more pragmatic than doing nothing. Now, of course, I need to translate those words into action, which is always a challenge for me. But as I say, I continue to be inspired and challenged by Glenn and this Sangha. So thank you, Glenn, for the talk, and thank you, everyone, for your comments.
Thanks, Johnny.
No, maybe in situations that are real hard, maybe we can't make them better, but we can try and make them suck less, So.
Yeah. Well, and I think your compassion makes them suck less. And that's sometimes what we forget is when we see someone suffering, yeah, we do have that almost innate, Bachelor would call it habituated reaction of, I wish I could change this. Well, instead of wishing you could change that, offer what you can right now. And what you can offer is presence and compassion. And focus on that rather than on wishing that it hadn't happened and that they weren't feeling that way. Trying to see if anybody has their hand up online. Doesn't look like it. Any other comments? Anyone's have something to say and hasn't spoken yet? Okay. Well, thank you. Good discussion as always. I get so much out of the discussions. I think the discussions bring up so many different ways of looking at the topic. And I really appreciate everyone participating. So we'll finish up with the Bodhisattva vow on page 3. Creations are numberless. I will strive to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I will strive to transform them. Reality is boundless. I will strive to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I will strive to embody it. May your thoughts, words, and actions be corrective and encompassing of the pragmatic Buddhist path. May you approach this week with deference and dignity, and may you spread your personal peace to all those you encounter. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and anger. Swaha. One last note, please remember that we do survive on your donations. Those of you who have pledged a monthly amount, I thank you for that. It really helps our budgeting. Those of you who are just coming in to check us out, donations can be given through our website, cocpb.com, or our Donna Bowl here. If you feel that you get something out of the community, I hope you'll be willing to support it as well. And I hate to make those announcements, but rent does cost money. Thank you all and have a good week.